Dear graduate, everyone told you to show up early, dress well, and smile on day one. And look, you did. You nailed it. But here's what nobody told you: your team stopped watching you on day one a long time ago. They're watching you now on week three, and they're watching how you respond when something goes wrong. They're watching whether the energy you bought on day one now exists on day 45. And they want to know if it's going to quietly disappear and you become something different than what you presented yourself to be. First impressions are made on the first day, but then there's an impression that continues to be made over time. And those are made over the first month, the first 60 days, the first 90 days. And today, we're going to talk about how to win that window here on Beyond Day One. As usual, I'm not alone to have this conversation. I've got friends with me. I bought Gen Z John with me, and then I've also got Phillip Rich. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me. I hope you both are doing well.
Yep.
Doing good. Absolutely.
So, as we continue to talk to the graduates and the graduating class, we often talk about first impressions. And as long as you're a professional, you'll probably hear things about first impressions. And let me tell you, a first impression, I think one of the things that we do that doesn't tell the whole truth about an impression is that there is initial impression, a first impression, but then there's the ongoing impression into how people know you. And we've got to work ourselves now beyond making the first good impression to now making the ongoing impression that allows people to know who we are and how we work. And so, in doing so, I'm going to start right off, John, with you because, again, with you being the youngest of our group, is there a moment or a time that you can think about where you started your job off excited, you were making a good first impression, and then what happened to your impression, John? Did it go away right away? Tell us a little bit about that and what it was like for you.
I I'll use my most recent job as an example because when I started working there, they had this like 90-day period. Like this is kind of like this period where they're like putting you under a microscope essentially. Everything you do is mostly attendance, but they really studied how you worked within those first 90 days. Um, and these are 90 work days, so that probably equates to like 4 or 5 months, when you take out, 5 days of the week. So I I was in a place where I obviously wanted to impress everybody. So I worked hard. I put myself in a position where I was, doing everything I can to make sure everything was done right. Which, nothing wrong with that. And it put me in a position where whenever somebody would leave above me or somebody got fired or something were to happen, I was the first person they would consider to promote. And that happened up until the point where I became a department lead. And then when I got into that position within like 4 or 5 months, I essentially I felt like that's when my, what's the right word here? I was in a position where I was actively trying to do things efficiently, where my main goal was to make sure, find whatever's slowing people down, whatever's putting everybody into a rut, and so that whatever it is, I can fix it and get everybody back on track to performing well throughout the day. And it got to a point, and I can't remember specifically how long it was. It wasn't too long. I think that it was like probably within a year of me working there, maybe a year and a half. Um, Whenever the challenges kind of stopped approaching me, and I got a little complacent, and that's when I kind of realized like, oh, like as long as I'm maintaining my daily tasks, making sure everybody's pushing to the best that they can push. I'm sending out all the emails that I need to send out, and I'm finishing my end of day situation. Um, I'm good, and then it kind of got me to like into this place where it's like, well, um, I realized very quickly. Well, I can't say very quickly. I've realized that within a period of time that if I just get too complacent, and if I just start doing the daily things and just keep doing the daily things and that's it, um, I don't want to say overlooked is the right word, but it gets to a point where if you're not pushing out, or like not necessarily introducing new ideas and changing things to make things more efficient, I kind of got hmm, oh I kind of got put into a place where I'm just like I'm holding things down. And like I said, it wasn't a bad thing, but over a long period of time, when that's just the expectation and that's all you're meeting, it put me in a place where I realized, okay, maybe I need to change up my workflow a little bit. But my impression definitely, uh, I wish it came a little earlier, where I recognize that maybe I can't just become complacent. I think that I lost that a little bit of that grit, where I'm like, okay, I need to change a few things up, see where else I can tackle some inefficiencies. I wish I had that. I wish I recognized that a little bit earlier. Probably would have saved me a few gray hairs here and there, for sure.
It's funny to hear you talk about gray hairs as if you're not 26 or 27.
Dude,
Uh,
I won't say anything about that. They're there. I promise you.
okay, you know the day one performance is expected. Some people would call it table stakes, right? Um, Everybody expects you to show up on day one. The adrenaline's kind of running. You're excited about the job. You're excited about what you're doing, and so um, everything's up, and it's up for a period of time. But then the difference between, or what separates um, strong starters from standout professionals is what happens after the adrenaline wears off. And let me tell you, there is a difference between strong starters and standout professionals, because those strong starters, they unfortunately, in far more jobs than I want to admit to, I was a strong starter. I
Yeah.
jumped in. I can think of one job that I had where I was working as a debt collector, a job that ultimately I hated, because the concept of getting on the phone and calling and harassing people for their money to pay out their debts, while I understand the need for it potentially, I didn't want to be the one to do it.
Right.
But there I was in desperate need of a job, so I took the job. And the first 3 months on the job, I was doing exactly, because it was a first time starter. I was going in, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to be that guy. And I won this $300 cash prize that I didn't even know I qualified for. And so I'm doing the thing. And that's like within the first 90 days. Man, they ran me out of that place so quickly by the next 90 days because I was garbage. And all I could think about, I was literally crying in the car saying, I hate this job. I don't want to do this.
Oh
And then
man.
I dragged that in with me, and everything
Mm,
about what my start looked like completely shifted,
Wow.
and I became who I really was later on. And so they knew they couldn't do anything with me. And so they were smart. They were smart to move on from me as quickly as they did. And I obliged them because I didn't want that. But there are strong starters like I was. And then there are standout professionals. And I've had the privilege in other jobs to be a standout professional because I loved what I was doing. And because I loved what I was doing, I was motivated. I was driven. Every day I wanted to see things move forward in a positive way. And I wanted to shuffle and shift things and really make things work. So I invested myself in that. And you see,
Yeah.
what you don't maybe even realize is that while you're going through the process, because look, I think everybody knows now you got to make it past your first 90 days. So I honestly believe, and you guys might feel differently, but I honestly believe the first 90 days is a little bit of a show. You can begin to diagnose and see some things because over a 90-day period, some of the truth is going to start showing through the process. But then after you get past that 90 days and on into the next bit of period, you're going to see even more and know what kind of individual you have working with you. But managers form their real opinion about you weeks later. Between weeks 2 and 6, they feel like they're starting to get a sense for who you are and what you're about. And as time goes, they grow more. And that is the window when your reputation is actually being written. And so you want to be, I've heard a wise woman say, whenever you have something going on, your number one job is to control the narrative. So you want to control the narrative about how people perceive and see you. And that has a lot to do with how you govern and carry yourself. So Philip, when managers are watching during this time, are there any specific things that you found that you looked for from your young professionals and new hires during their first period of time with you?
I would definitely say one of the things that could work against a new hire is if they basically just disappear after
Mm,
the initial, like you said, initial strong start. Then all of a sudden it's like they dropped off the radar completely. Sometimes people do that. I think because they're more of a wait and see kind of a person, they're
Mhm.
maybe trying to find their way, like where they fit in the organization. But that can be perceived as someone who lacks initiative or someone who's unsure of themselves to the point of where it could negatively affect their job. And so they may have the best ideas in the world or the best ability to handle the responsibilities they have on the planet. But if they take more of a passive stance or more of a passive approach, rather, it's going to work against them, even if they're not intending for it to be that way. So I would say, don't disappear. Be present and make your presence known. I think a good tip is to ask at least one question every week, just to register on the radar with your higher ups that you're still engaged, you're still willing to do the best effort you can, put forth the best effort you can, that type
Mhm.
of thing. And that just lets them know, just even something as simple as that lets them know, okay, they're uh they're not just kind of phoning it in. They're here because they want to do a good job. And I think engagement and showing and displaying engagement consistently, it will be one of the biggest keys to making sure that you're making the right impression even after those initial first few days.
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's great, Philip. If I were to give you three things that quietly kill a strong start, like Philip was saying, another one of them would be attitude drift. Um, Again, something you see, especially from new graduates and new people coming into the workplace. They come in with this great attitude. Whether you're thinking I'm about to make this money, I'm about to do this, that, whatever the reason for your great attitude, you start strong. But then it doesn't take long from that attitude to shift from eager and engaged to frustrated and entitled. And there's nothing worse than somebody to come into your workspace and feel entitled.
Yes.
Man, that
Mm.
drives me and other leaders that I know of nuts. For you to feel entitled to anything when in this organization you came in the door new. You haven't built anything yet. So attitude drift is a big thing, and it shows up in your body language. It shows up in your tone in meetings. It shows up in how you respond when things are going your way versus when they're not going your way. And your managers see it before they say anything about it. So you have to keep that attitude drift in the right place. The other thing, and Philip, you touched on it, is going mousy. You know, even when you start strong, a lot of people just kind of get quiet afterwards as if now my job is to blend into the background and
Mhm.
hopefully nobody will see me.
Right.
And that's not a great place to be, because if you're just blending into the background, at some point somebody's going to say, why are you here? What are you contributing to the well-being of the organization and the company? We didn't bring you here to just hide in the back. We bought you here to help to be a part of making a difference for this organization. It's unfortunate there are too many organizations with too many people hiding in the backgrounds just collecting a check. And that's so unfair to the organization that you're working for, regardless of the reason why you say you are doing it. And then the third thing I'd add to what Philip said is feedback resistance. You know, it's your manager's job. It's sometimes it's your coworkers' jobs to give you feedback and to share with you things that will help you to improve or be better. And I've watched so many people get offended by that. Philip comes to me and says, "Hey, I noticed that we're training a project together, and the way that I'm training it and the way that he intends for it to go are not going in the same direction." And Philip comes to me as the senior trainer and says to me, "Hey, I want us to kind of get on the same track with that." And I get offended because I feel like, well, I'm a better trainer than he is. So how dare he tell me? But he's the senior trainer. He's the one responsible in guiding this thing. So who am I to tell him how it ought to be? I can make a suggestion how a piece of it may flow or some other thing like that. But ultimately, even though he may not be my boss, he's the senior person. And it may actually behoove me to listen and hear what he has to say. But dismissing correction, nodding, and then doing nothing differently, people, oh, there's nothing that bothers not well, another thing that bothers me is people who will sit in front of you while you're giving them some kind of hopefully positive correction, and they nod and say yes, and then they go and do nothing with it.
Right.
That tells you, I mean, Philip, wouldn't you say that tells you something about that person?
Absolutely. It displays a lack of humility, you
Hmm.
know, and just kind of the idea that I've got it all figured out. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but my ideas are obviously superior. That type of thing. Um, it's not good. It's not a good look, and it's going to prevent you from growing. Is what it's going to do, because a lot of times there are people who have more experience than you, who see things that maybe you don't. They have more of an objective viewpoint of your performance than you do, and so if you don't take what they say and internalize it and just kind of resist it because maybe it hurts a little bit, maybe it's kind of stepping on your toes a little bit. You got to learn how to get past those feelings and really get the intent of what they're trying to tell you, and go, okay, is this true on its own merits? Not because it's not an evaluation of how what type of person I am. It's just an evaluation of the performance that on the job. And if I'm able to move past my feelings about it and look at the actual evidence that they're presenting to me, does it make sense? Can I sign on to that? But you're right, David. It's tough when you deal with somebody who honestly just kind of thinks they have it all figured out. Hardly ever works out well.
No, never does. So here are three quick things that will help you win in your first 30, 60, 90 days. Number one, consistency is the real first impression. Let me say that again. Consistency is the real first impression. Show up the same way on day 22 as you did on day one, the same way on day 50 as you did on day one, the same way on day 90 as you do on day one. Come with energy, come with some excitement, and a realization that you're there to make a difference in that organization. Be curious, be present, and be willing. The second thing is ask one good question per week. Take the opportunity again to put that curiosity to work and ask one good question each week. That makes it look like you're engaged, that you're smart and you're thinking about things, and your boss will enjoy and appreciate that about you. And then finally, how to handle a misstep in the first month or so without letting it define you. If you make a mistake, something happens, something embarrassing happens or whatever, own it. Fix it fast and then move on without making it a bigger deal than it has to be. Others might hold on to it for longer than you want to. Don't be moved by that. Don't be offended by that. Uh, we're working with people in the environment, and people are going to do people stuff. Don't be moved by it. You just keep working with the same energy, excitement, curiosity, and engagement that you started with, and you'll win over that in no time quick. So, next week, we're going to talk about reading the room. And it's something we've talked about here before, but when you've got team dynamics going on, you need to figure out how things are actually working and what's going on around you before you accidentally step on something that you can't step off of. So we're going to tackle that. Just remember, if you're in your first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days right now, um, screenshot this episode, save it so you can come back to it, and also share it with someone because this is the kind of information I wish I had when I was starting so that I can improve my first impressions. All right. Any final thoughts, Philip or John?
I would just
I-
say, just to reiterate what you said earlier, stay engaged, you know, stay on the radar. That's pretty much all I can say right now.
Yeah, I'd say I learned the best way to, for me personally, and my personality is the best way to stay engaged is to find the problems that nobody wants to fix. I know we mentioned that a few weeks ago too, but the stuff that nobody wants to do and do it. If you have the capacity to do it, just do the thing that nobody wants to do. Fix the problem that nobody wants to fix, or that you see coming that most people don't see coming. That keeps you useful and also active and also not flying under the radar of management.
That's good,
Mm,
John.
yeah, that's really good, John. Day one is the audition. The first month is the role, and the way you show up when nobody is cheering for you anymore. HR is not always this and all of that good stuff. That's who you actually are at work. And so stay consistent, stay curious, stay coachable, and then remember the impression you leave over the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days is the one that follows you. So
Yeah.
make it a good one. This is Beyond Day One, and we will see you next time.